You are Eric Theodore Cartman. You're the smartest, funniest, most manipulative kid in South Park. You always get what you want. You've outsmarted everyone. Cops, parents, even Cthulhu. You've fed your enemies their own parents. You've built theme parks. You've started cults. You always win. And everyone else? They're just jealous of your greatness. What a perfect life. Too bad it's all a lie you tell yourself. Because underneath the bravado and schemes and victories, you're a profoundly damaged, desperately lonely child trapped in a cycle of codependency, delusion, and self-destruction. Your manipulation doesn't bring power, it brings isolation. Your wins are hollow, and deep down, you know it. Let's talk about what it's really like to be Eric Cartman. Let's start with what you're known for. Manipulation. You're a genius at it. You can con anyone into anything. You manipulated an entire town into thinking you could communicate with the dead. You convinced Kyle to suck your balls on national television. You created a fake Jennifer Lopez personality and fooled everyone. You're the master manipulator of South Park. And you know what all that manipulation has gotten you? Nothing. Every single scheme you pull, every elaborate plan you execute, they either blow up in your face or leave you exactly where you started. Let's run through some of your greatest hits. Scott Tenorman Must Die. Your masterpiece. You got Scott Tenorman's parents killed, chopped them up, made them into chili, and fed them to him while Radiohead mocked him for crying. Everyone cites this as your darkest moment, the moment you became truly evil. Want to know something funny? You did all that over $16.12 and pubic hair. That's it. You spent weeks planning an elaborate revenge scheme that involved murder and cannibalism because a teenager pranked you out of $16. And at the end, when you're licking Scott's tears and declaring victory, what did you actually gain? Nothing. You didn't get your money back, you didn't get the pubic hair, you just traumatized someone and scared your only friends. That's it. Oh, and here's the best part. 9 years ago, in 2001, you found out that Scott's father, the man you had killed, was also your father. You spent your entire childhood desperate to know who your dad was, and when you finally found out, it was the man you'd already murdered and fed to your half-brother. You killed your own father and didn't even know it. That's not a victory. That's Greek tragedy. But let's keep going. Cartman Land. You inherited $1 million from your grandmother and bought an amusement park. You didn't let anyone else in because you wanted it all to yourself. And for a brief moment, you were happy. Genuinely happy. Then reality hit. You needed security guards, maintenance workers, insurance. One by one, you had to let people in until the park was full of visitors and you were broke again. You ended up exactly where you started, with nothing. Christian rock heart. You formed a Christian rock band purely to make money and win a bet against Kyle. And you did it. You bought a platinum album. You were successful. Except Christian rock doesn't count for the Billboard charts. Your platinum album was meaningless. Kyle won the bet. You smashed your own trophy in rage and learned absolutely nothing. See the pattern? You win constantly, but every victory is hollow. Every scheme ends with you having gained nothing except the temporary satisfaction of feeling superior, and that satisfaction lasts maybe 5 minutes before you're back to being the same miserable, lonely kid you've always been. You manipulate people because you have no real power. You scheme because nobody respects you. You win because you're so desperate to prove you're better than everyone else that you've turned your entire life into a series of elaborate coping mechanisms. And the worst part? You know this. You have to know this, because every single time you win, you're alone. Let's talk about your friends, Kyle, Stan, and Kenny. Your best friends, the guys you've known since preschool, the people you spend every day with. They don't like you. Let me be clear, they tolerate you. They hang out with you because you live near them and they've known you forever, but they don't actually like you. They never have. You're the friend nobody likes. It's not even subtle. Kyle hates you, like actually hates you. He's told you to your face multiple times. In tonsil trouble, when you accidentally gave him AIDS, he screamed that he hopes you die. In Le Petit Tourette, you faked Tourette syndrome just to say whatever you wanted, and Kyle spent the entire episode exhausted trying to expose you, pushed to his absolute limit dealing with your manipulation. And let's not forget, you literally wrote and performed a song called Kyle's Mom's a Bitch in front of the entire town. In Mr. Hanky the Christmas Poo, you publicly humiliated his mother with a musical number. You've tried to murder Kyle multiple times. In Toilet Paper, you tried to bludgeon him to death with a wiffle bat in the middle of a lake. Your relationship isn't friendship, it's mutual hostility held together by geographic proximity. Stan, he's more tolerant of you than Kyle, but that's not saying much. He constantly calls you a fat ass. In 1%, he yelled at you for making the entire school lose recess because you couldn't handle criticism. In Death, he gave you snacky cakes to calm you down like you're a toddler having a tantrum. He doesn't see you as an equal. He sees you as a problem that needs to be managed. And Kenny? He dies constantly, comes back, and continues hanging out with you, not because he likes you, but because the four of you are stuck together by circumstance. Throughout the series, he goes along with your schemes when it benefits him and ignores you when it doesn't. That's not friendship, that's tolerance. But let's talk about the most devastating example, South Park post-COVID. In that timeline, Stan, Kyle, and Kenny finally did what they'd probably wanted to do for decades. They cut you out, completely. They stopped hanging out with you, stopped talking to you, stopped acknowledging your existence. And what happened to you? You became a homeless alcoholic. You lost your mind from loneliness. You couldn't function as a human being because the only thing holding you together was the attention, even negative attention, from people who barely tolerated you. When they ignored you, you collapsed completely. Because your entire identity is based on forcing people to pay attention to you, and without that attention, you're nothing. The show literally gave you the worst punishment possible, being ignored. Not beaten up, not humiliated, not defeated, ignored. Because for someone like you, being irrelevant is worse than death. And here's the thing, even when they do hang out with you, it's not real friendship. In You Have Zero Friends, Kyle made you a Facebook profile and you immediately started a podcast called Mad Friends, sabotaged your own friend's social life because you couldn't handle him showing kindness to someone else. That's not what friends do. That's what sociopaths do. Most people at South Park Elementary openly despise you. You're mocked for your weight constantly. In 1%, Craig told you to go home and cry to your stuffed animals because everyone knows about your mental health issues and sees you as a joke. You don't have friends, you have hostages. People who are stuck with you because they've known you too long to get rid of you, and the moment they're free of you, they're happier. That's what your manipulation has earned you, a lifetime of being barely tolerated by people who would be relieved if you disappeared.
Let's talk about Leanne Cartman, your mother, the only person in the world who unconditionally loves you, and the reason you're completely broken. Leanne is the textbook definition of an enabling parent. She gives you everything you want, never disciplines you, never sets boundaries, and actively reinforces your worst behaviors. You call her a bitch, you manipulate her, you treat her like garbage, and she just lets you. Insist when she hired Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer, to fix your behavior, it actually worked. For the first time in your life, someone gave you structure, discipline, and consequences, and you became a functional human being. You cleaned your room, you did your homework, you stopped being a nightmare. And then Leanne couldn't handle it. She missed being needed. She missed being your emotional caretaker, so she sabotaged the entire thing, and you went back to being a monster, because your mother would rather have a dysfunctional child who needs her than a healthy child who doesn't. This is called enmeshment. It's when a parent and child have such blurred emotional boundaries that neither can function independently. Sound familiar? You don't have a mother. You have a codependent relationship with someone who feeds your narcissism because it makes her feel important. And the worst part? You know this. You use this. In multiple episodes, you manipulate your mother into doing whatever you want by crying, throwing tantrums, or threatening to withhold affection. You've weaponized her need for your approval, and she lets you because she's as trapped as you are. But let's talk about the bigger issue, your father. You spent years desperate to know who your father was. It consumed you. The town covered it up, your mother lied, everyone kept the truth from you because they decided you were better off not knowing. And in 201, you found out.
Jack Tenorman, Scott Tenorman's father, a Denver Broncos player who had an affair with your mother and left before you were born. And you'd already killed him. In the most brutal, elaborate revenge scheme you'd ever pulled, you murdered your own father and didn't even know it. When you found out, you were devastated. You cried. You broke down. For maybe the first time in the entire series, you showed genuine emotional pain. And then you covered it up. You pretended you were crying because you're half ginger, not because you'd killed your own father, because you'd rather be seen as a bigot than admit you're heartbroken. That's what growing up without a father did to you. You became so desperate for approval, for attention, for validation, that you turned into a monster. And when you finally found the truth, it was too late. You'd already destroyed the one connection you'd been searching for. Your mother enabled you, your father abandoned you, and the combination created someone who doesn't understand love, doesn't understand boundaries, and doesn't understand how to be a functional human being. You're not evil because you're born bad. You're evil because you were raised in an environment where nobody ever taught you how to be good.
Let's go back to your wins, because this is what's so tragic about your life. You do win, all the time, and it never makes you happy. Make love, not Warcraft. You and the boys spent weeks playing World of Warcraft to defeat a griefer. You won. You killed him. You saved the game. And then what? You're still the same kid in South Park. Nothing changed. The victory was completely meaningless outside the game. The Coon Trilogy. You created a superhero persona, started a franchise, built an entire team. And then everyone turned on you because you were being an authoritarian dictator. Your own superhero team kicked you out. And Mysterian, Kenny, kept the name Coon and Friends specifically to piss you off. Your superhero fantasy ended with you being alone and humiliated again. Poor and stupid. You wanted to be a NASCAR driver so badly that you faked being poor and stupid. You actually competed, and then you crashed a stolen car into a lake and nearly drowned because you were so desperate to fit in with a group that you destroyed yourself trying. Even when you succeed at your goals, the goals themselves are empty. You don't actually want the things you chase. You want the validation that comes from achieving them. And when you get them and realize they're hollow, you immediately move on to the next scheme. Let's talk about fish sticks. You convinced yourself that you created the fish sticks joke that became a national phenomenon. You actually believed you made it up, even though you didn't. Your delusion was so strong that you rewrote your own memory. And when everyone told you the truth, you doubled down. You fought reality itself because admitting you were wrong would mean admitting you're not special. This is pathological. This isn't confidence. This is a fracture between your perception of reality and actual reality. Your observing ego exists. You can see the truth, but you choose to ignore it because the truth is unbearable. Here's another one. Cartman finds love. You manipulated Token and Nicole into dating because you wanted Token to be with his own kind, a black girl. Your racism was so ingrained that you destroyed genuine relationships to enforce your worldview. And at the end, you won. They ended up together. But it wasn't because of you, it was despite you. And you learned nothing. Breast cancer show ever. Wendy challenged you to a fight. You spent the entire episode stalling, crying, trying to get out of it. You faked being sick. You deliberately got yourself detention. You even manipulated your mother into going to Wendy's house, crying fake tears to get her parents to forbid the fight. And when the fight finally happened anyway, Wendy beat you mercilessly in front of the entire school. She left you bloody, bruised, with teeth knocked out, sobbing pathetically on the playground. And the next day, you convinced yourself the other kids still respected you, even after they explicitly told you they never did and never would. Because admitting you lost to a girl, admitting you were publicly humiliated, would shatter your entire fragile ego. Your life is a series of hollow victories and denied defeats. You win things that don't matter and lose things that do, and you never, ever learn. Here's the thing that makes you truly tragic. You have self-awareness. You're not delusional in the way people think. You know you're a monster. You know people hate you. You know your schemes are evil. You're aware of all of it. You just don't care. Or more accurately, you've convinced yourself that you don't care. In Asperger's, when Stan became depressed and saw everything as shit, you didn't even notice when he stopped hanging out with you. You replaced Kyle in your business venture and moved on without a second thought, because to you, people are interchangeable props in your schemes. But then in other episodes, you showed devastating moments of vulnerability. Kenny dies. When Kenny was diagnosed with a terminal illness, you did something shocking. You tried to save him. You lobbied Congress to legalize stem cell research. You gave an impassioned speech. You worked harder than anyone to keep Kenny alive. And then it was revealed you only did it because you wanted to build a Shakey's Pizza franchise using aborted fetuses. Even in your one moment that looked selfless, your motivations were mixed at best. There might have been genuine concern somewhere in there. You showed moments of confusion, of emotional conflict, but you buried it under layers of self-interest and manipulation. You couldn't even process Kenny's death without turning it into a scheme. In 1%, when the school blamed you for losing recess, you had a complete mental breakdown. You talked to your stuffed animals like they were real. You considered suicide. Your mental health fractured so badly that you couldn't distinguish reality from your toys. That's not strength. That's fragility. Your entire persona is a house of cards, and the moment anyone applies pressure, you collapse. Throughout the series, your behavior patterns are textbook. Fear of abandonment, your desperate need for your mom's attention, intimacy issues, you sabotage any real connection, overcompensation through aggression. You don't need a therapist to diagnose you. Your actions speak for themselves. You push people away before they can leave you. You hurt them before they can hurt you. You win because losing would confirm what you're terrified is true, that you're worthless. In the death of Eric Cartman, you thought you died and became a ghost. And you know what you did? You tried to make amends. You gave fruit baskets to everyone you'd wronged. Scott Tenenmorn for killing his parents, the Jewish congregation you'd tormented, all the people you'd hurt. You're capable of remorse. You're capable of recognizing that you've hurt people. But only when you think there are no consequences. Only when you think you're already dead and facing judgment. The moment you realized you were still alive, you went right back to the same behavior. That's the tragedy of Eric Cartman. You know what you are. You just can't change it. Here's the truth nobody talks about. You're not going to change. Ever. Over 25+ seasons, hundreds of episodes, decades of time, you've learned temporary lessons. You've had moments of growth. And then the next episode, you're back to the same behavior. Because change means admitting that everything you've done was wrong. Change means confronting the damage you've caused. Change means accepting that you're not special, not superior, not the smartest person in the room. And you can't do that. Because if you're not special, then what are you? You're a traumatized kid with abandonment issues and a codependent mother who never learned how to process emotions in a healthy way. That's it. That's all you are underneath the schemes and manipulation and cruelty. And you can't face that. So you double down. You hurt people first. You win meaningless victories. You tell yourself you're superior. And you trap yourself in a cycle that will never end. In post-COVID, the return of COVID, there's a timeline where you actually grew up, got married, had kids, and seemed happy. You became a rabbi. You had a loving family. You found peace. And when your past self came back, threatening to undo that timeline, you fought to protect it. You wanted desperately to keep that life, because it was the only version of your future where you weren't miserable. But to get that future, you had to become a completely different person. You had to let go of everything that makes you Cartman. And in the end, you couldn't do it. You went back to being yourself. Because being Cartman, even miserable, lonely, hated Cartman, is easier than change. You're trapped. Not by the town, not by your friends, not by circumstances. You're trapped by yourself. And you always will be.
So why does it suck to be Eric Cartman? It sucks because you're a genius, a legitimate genius. You can manipulate anyone, plan anything, outsmart everyone, and you use all that intelligence to accomplish nothing. It sucks because everyone hates you.
Not in the fun rivalry way, they actually genuinely wish you didn't exist, and the only people who tolerate you do so out of obligation, not affection. It sucks because your mother ruined you. She enabled every toxic behavior, never gave you boundaries, and trapped you in a codependent relationship that prevents you from ever becoming a functional adult. It sucks because your father abandoned you, and when you finally found out who he was, you'd already killed him. You spent your entire childhood searching for paternal validation, and you destroyed the only chance you had without even knowing it. It sucks because every victory is hollow. You win constantly, and it never makes you happy. You manipulate your way to success, and then realize the success was meaningless. It sucks because you have self-awareness. You know what you are. You know people hate you. You know you're broken. But you can't change because changing means admitting you've been wrong about everything. And it sucks because you're trapped. Trapped in a cycle of hurt people before they hurt you, win meaningless victories, deny reality, and stay lonely forever. You're not a winner. You're a profoundly damaged child who turned pain into power and manipulation into identity. And the person you've hurt most isn't Kyle or Stan or any of your victims. It's yourself. You had every opportunity to change, to grow, to become someone better, and you chose again and again and again to stay exactly who you are. Because being Eric Cartman, cruel, manipulative, hated Eric Cartman, is the only identity you know how to be. And you'll never escape it. Sweet dreams, fat ass.